The winter wind howled through the gaps in the wooden walls, carrying with it the bite of 40 below zero. Sarah stood in her small kitchen, her breath visible in the cold air despite the fire crackling in the corner. Her hands, rough from years of hard work, rested on the smooth stones of her outdoor oven stones she'd carefully selected from the riverbed and mortared together herself over the course of 3 summers. "You still fiddling with that thing?" her neighbor Margaret called from across the fence, bundled in 3 layers of wool. "Honestly, Sarah, I don't know why you waste your time. My grandmother had one of those old-fashioned ovens, and even she gave it up for a proper stove 40 years ago." Sarah smiled without turning around. "This one's different, Margaret. I've been working on the design." Margaret laughed, not unkindly, but with the certainty of someone who knows better. "Different or not, it's January in Alaska. That little stone box of yours isn't going to do much good when the thermometer won't climb above freezing for 3 months straight." It wasn't just Margaret. At the community center last week, when Sarah had mentioned her project, the response had been polite but dismissive. Tom, who ran the hardware store, had chuckled and said that modern appliances existed for a reason. Linda, the baker who supplied bread to half the town, had patted her arm sympathetically and suggested Sarah spend her energy on something more practical. Even her own son, calling from the city where he worked, had expressed concern. "Mom, I know you like your projects, but it's dangerous up there. What if your power goes out and you can't rely on that stone thing? What if you need help and you're out there messing with rocks in sub-zero temperatures?" But Sarah had learned long ago not to measure her work by other people's expectations. She'd grown up in a family where resourcefulness wasn't just valued, it was necessary for survival. Her grandmother had taught her that the old ways weren't inferior. They were tested by generations, refined by necessity, and proven by time. While everyone else had moved on to electric ovens and gas ranges, Sarah had become fascinated by the ancient technology of thermal mass cooking. She'd spent 2 years researching, reading everything she could find about traditional bread ovens from cultures around the world. She studied the beehive ovens of colonial America, the tandoors of Central Asia, the hornos of the Southwest. She learned about heat retention, thermal conductivity, and the specific properties of different types of stone. She discovered that the Vikings had used similar ovens in climates even harsher than her own. The design she finally settled on was her own creation, but built on centuries of collective knowledge. She'd chosen dense river stones for their ability to absorb and hold heat. She'd shaped the dome to maximize hot air circulation while minimizing heat loss. She'd positioned the opening to face away from the prevailing winds and built a small shelter around it to protect the structure from the worst of the weather. Most importantly, she'd insulated the entire structure with a thick layer of clay mixed with straw, then covered that with more stones. The real innovation, the thing she was most proud of, was the dual-chamber system she'd designed. The main baking chamber sat above a secondary chamber where coals could be maintained, creating a steady, even heat that could be sustained for hours. It was this feature that she believed would make all the difference when the real cold came. And the real cold had definitely come. It was the middle of January now, and the temperature had been sitting at 40 below for 3 days straight. The kind of cold that made your lungs hurt when you breathed. The kind of cold that could kill you in minutes if you weren't careful. The kind of cold that made even simple tasks feel like expeditions, requiring careful planning and layers of preparation. Sarah had prepared for this moment. For the past week, she'd been firing her oven daily, letting the stones absorb heat, building up their thermal mass. She'd learned that the key wasn't just heating the oven once, it was creating a reservoir of warmth in the stones themselves, training them to hold heat like a battery holds electricity. This morning, at 5 a.m., she'd started her fire in the secondary chamber. She'd fed it slowly, carefully, using the dried wood she'd seasoned over the summer. By 7, the stones were beginning to radiate a gentle warmth. By 9, her oven thermometer, the only modern concession in her traditional setup, registered 450 degrees Fahrenheit inside the baking chamber. Outside, the temperature was 42 below zero. Her bread dough had been rising in the warmest corner of her kitchen since last night. She'd used her grandmother's recipe: flour, water, salt, and wild yeast. She'd cultivated herself from local berries. The dough had doubled in size overnight, full of air bubbles and possibility. She shaped 3 loaves carefully, her experienced hands working quickly despite the cold that tried to seep through every crack in her house. She scored the tops with a sharp knife, those traditional slashes that would allow the bread to expand properly in the oven's heat. Then came the moment of truth. She bundled herself in her warmest coat, wrapped her hands in thick gloves with wool liners underneath, and carried her loaves outside. The cold hit her like a physical force, trying to steal the breath from her lungs. The loaves themselves seemed to protest, their warmth creating little clouds of steam in the frigid air. But the oven, her little stone creation that everyone had dismissed, radiated heat like a small sun. She could feel it from 3 feet away. She removed the door she'd crafted from scrap metal, and a wave of warmth rushed out to meet her. The temperature inside hadn't dropped below 400 degrees. Despite the Arctic air surrounding it, she slid her loaves onto the stone floor of the baking chamber with her wooden peel, positioned them carefully, and closed the door. Then she hurried back inside, her cheeks already numb from the brief exposure. Now came the waiting. She made herself a cup of tea from herbs she'd dried last summer and settled into her chair by the window where she could watch her oven. 45 minutes for the bread to bake, 45 minutes to see if all her research, all her work, all her conviction in the face of everyone's doubts, would pay off. She thought about why this mattered so much to her. It wasn't just about bread, though she loved the smell of fresh bread, the satisfaction of creating something nourishing with her own hands. It wasn't just about proving the skeptics wrong, though she was human enough to admit that played a small part. It was about remembering that not everything new was better. It was about understanding that solutions to problems, especially problems as old as staying warm and fed in a harsh climate, had been solved before, sometimes in ways that were more sustainable, more reliable, and more elegant than their modern replacements. Her electric oven worked fine, of course, but it depended on a power grid that could fail. It depended on infrastructure maintained by systems beyond her control. It used energy that came from sources she couldn't see and couldn't influence. Her stone oven, by contrast, was entirely within her sphere of understanding and control. She knew every stone in its construction. She'd gathered the fuel that fed it. If something broke, she could fix it with materials she could find or make herself. There was a deep satisfaction in that kind of self, not because she wanted to reject the modern world entirely. She loved her phone, her internet connection, her ability to research and learn from people across the globe, but because she believed there was value in maintaining knowledge and skills that didn't depend on that world continuing to function perfectly. 40-5 minutes passed. Then she bundled up again and went back outside. The cold seemed even more vicious now, if that was possible. The sun had barely managed to show itself above the horizon, providing light but no warmth whatsoever. Her boots crunched on snow so dry it squeaked with every step, but her oven still radiated warmth. She opened the door carefully, and the smell that emerged made her close her eyes in satisfaction. That unmistakable aroma of bread baking, yeast and flour transforming into something golden and perfect. The loaves were beautiful. Their crusts had darkened to a deep brown. The scores she'd made had opened up in those characteristic patterns that professional bakers spend years learning to achieve. When she tapped them on the bottom, they sounded hollow, the sign of bread properly baked all the way through. She brought them inside quickly, before the cold could leach away their heat, and set them on her cooling rack. Steam rose from their crusts. When she finally cut into the first loaf, after forcing herself to wait 20 minutes for them to cool enough to slice properly, the inside was perfect. The crumb was open and airy, full of irregular holes that caught the butter she spread on a thick slice. The crust crackled under her knife. She took a bite, and it was everything bread should be. It tasted like her grandmother's kitchen, like summer afternoons and patient hands teaching her to knead dough. It tasted like resilience and resourcefulness. It tasted like proof. Margaret was the first to arrive, though Sarah hadn't told anyone what she was attempting today. The smell of fresh bread has a way of traveling, even in 40 below weather. Did you actually bake bread? Margaret stood in her doorway, eyes wide. In this weather? In that stone oven? Sarah just smiled and cut another thick slice. Would you like some? It's still warm. Margaret took the bread almost reverently. She bit into it, and her expression shifted from skepticism to surprise to something approaching wonder. This is better than anything Linda makes at the bakery. How is this possible? The stones hold heat incredibly well once they're properly saturated, Sarah explained, falling into the teaching mode she'd inherited from her grandmother, and the dome shape creates perfect air circulation. The thermal mass of the structure means it maintains consistent temperature regardless of the outside conditions. In some ways, extreme cold actually helps. There's less ambient heat to interfere with the controlled environment inside the oven. By evening, word had spread through their small community. People found reasons to drop by, curious to see the bread, to hear the story, to understand how she'd done it. Tom from the hardware store came, measured the oven with his practiced eye, and asked detailed questions about the construction. Linda the baker came with her husband, tasted the bread with the critical palate of a professional, and asked if Sarah would consider teaching a workshop that her son called that night. Having heard about it through the community grapevine that somehow still functioned even faster than social media, Mom, I saw the pictures people posted. That's incredible. I'm sorry I doubted you. You didn't doubt me, Sarah said gently. You were worried about me. That's different, and I appreciate it, but how did you know it would work? Sarah thought about that for a moment. I didn't know, not completely, but I believed in the principles behind it. Stone has been used for thermal mass for thousands of years because it works. The physics doesn't change just because we've invented newer methods. Sometimes the old ways persist, not because people are stubborn or ignorant, but because they solved real problems in ways that are still valid. The mockery hadn't always been open or direct. Sometimes it came wrapped in concern, delivered with a sympathetic smile and a gentle suggestion that perhaps Sarah was taking her hobbies a bit too seriously. Other times it arrived as jokes at the post office, where Bill the postmaster would ask if she was planning to time travel back to the 19th century, or if she'd be churning her own butter next. Nothing wrong with being interested in history, he'd say, handing over her packages of obscure books on traditional building methods, but we've got perfectly good appliances now for a reason. you know, progress and all that. Sarah would nod politely, tuck her books under her arm, and leave without trying to explain. She'd learned that some people couldn't understand until they saw results with their own eyes. Words alone, no matter how carefully chosen, wouldn't bridge the gap between skepticism and belief. The worst criticism had come from her late husband's brother, Uncle Frank, who'd visited in early December before the deep cold set in. He'd stood in her yard, hands on his hips, staring at the stone structure she'd built with a mixture of bewilderment and pity. Jenny would have hated this, he'd said, referring to Sarah's late mother. She spent her whole life getting away from this kind of primitive living, fought tooth and nail to get modern conveniences into this house. And here you are, going backward. Sarah had felt the sting of those words more than she cared to admit. She'd loved her mother-in-law, respected her immensely. Jenny had indeed worked hard to modernize their family home, to bring in electricity and running water and all the comforts that made life in rural Alaska more bearable. But Sarah didn't see her project as a rejection of that progress. She saw it as something different to both on rather than an either-or. I'm not going backward, she'd told Frank quietly. I'm expanding my options. Jenny taught me to be resourceful, to never depend entirely on any single system. This is just another tool in the toolbox. Frank had shaken his head and changed the subject, clearly unconvinced. When he left 2 days later, she'd seen him exchange a meaningful look with Margaret over the fence. The kind of look that said everything without words. Humor her, she's going through something. Maybe she'll move on to a more reasonable hobby eventually. But Sarah hadn't moved on. She'd doubled down, driven partly by conviction, and partly, she had to admit, by sheer stubbornness. Every time someone suggested she was wasting her time, every time someone laughed or made a joke about her little stone oven, she'd feel that familiar fire kindle inside her, the same determination that had gotten her through nursing school as a single mother, the same resolve that had helped her build a life in one of the harshest climates on Earth. The technical challenges had been more difficult than she'd anticipated. Her first attempt at the oven had cracked during its initial firing. She'd chosen the wrong type of mortar, something that couldn't handle the extreme temperature changes. The crack had been small at first, barely visible, but after 3 days of use, it had spread across the entire dome like a spider web. She'd torn it down and started over. Her second attempt had worked better, but the heat distribution was uneven. Bread placed in the back of the oven baked too quickly while loaves near the front stayed pale and underdone. She'd spent weeks researching, sketching different configurations, trying to understand the fluid dynamics of hot air in an enclosed space. A retired physics teacher from Fairbanks, a man named Dr. Chen, whom she'd met through an online forum about traditional building methods, had become an unexpected mentor. They'd exchanged dozens of emails, and he'd even driven up one weekend in October to consult on her design. The problem is your entry angle, he'd explained, crouching to peer into the oven opening. You're creating a cold spot. The hot air wants to rise, but you're forcing it to make too sharp a turn here. If you raise the floor of the entry tunnel by about 3 inches and create a more gradual slope, you'll get better circulation. She'd rebuilt the entry tunnel according to his specifications. The improvement had been immediate and dramatic. Dr. Chen had become a believer that weekend. He'd taken photos, made measurements, filled a notebook with calculations. This is fascinating, he'd said, his academic reserve giving way to genuine enthusiasm. You're essentially creating a super-efficient heat battery. The thermal mass here, if my calculations are correct, should be able to maintain baking temperatures for up to 8 hours after the fire dies down, even in extreme cold. Maybe longer. That's the theory, Sarah had said, but I won't know for sure until we get the real cold, the kind that tests everything. Now, in the weeks following her successful 40-below bake, Sarah found herself in an unexpected position. The woman everyone had dismissed as eccentric at best and foolish at worst had become something of a local authority. People wanted her expertise. They valued her knowledge. The dynamic had shifted so completely that it sometimes made her uncomfortable.